Hello and welcome to our recording for small operators on legal considerations and steps one must take when starting a business. Brought to you by Venn Purchase Group. I'm Eric Larson, Manager of Education at NAMA. Thank you for joining us today. For anyone in attendance who may not have known us prior to this recording, the National Automatic Merchandising Association, or NAMA, promotes and protects the advancement of the convenience services industry. Convenience services can take the form of many different types of unattended retail or services, such as vending machines, micro markets, and office coffee and pantry services, as well as the businesses supporting these operations. Our goal in the education department is to help operators gain revenue, gain efficiency, and fulfill the purpose of their business. Joining us today to detail the topic at hand is Karen Tobin, who's an attorney at Smith Awenson. Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thanks everybody for joining us this morning. I'm going to dive right into it because I want to cover a variety of issues that you might come across and are thinking about in your business. And so I'm just going to start and cover a few things about incorporation. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to also talk about some of the pitfalls that you might run into that I want you to avoid as you might encounter with a business to stay away from as well. So with that, I'm going to go to the first slide. Next. Where's my next button with this one?
Your controls are on. There you go.
Got it. All right. So formation. We're gonna talk about the name for your business, the owners, the type of entity you might choose, the registered agent, which is who you select for service of process, and we're going to talk about jurisdiction, which is the state that you would select for formation of the business, and the purpose that you have to put down in the articles of incorporation or articles of organization. So with the name, you want to do due diligence with the name selection. You don't want it to be a name that someone else has, and that can be due diligence with your regular Google searches, USPTO, with trademarks, as well as with the Secretary of State. So that's something that you can have an attorney do for you. You can do it on your own, but you want to make sure that it's not already taken. The owners, is it going to be just you, or are you going into business with someone? And I'll talk further about this. You want to make sure that you document and talk about the issues that you might have with going into business with someone. What happens down the road when one of you wants to do something else. How are you going to, value the business and give that person the share, the value of the business when they want to leave? You might have different opinions on what the value of the business is at that point in time. What is going to happen when someone does something wrong with the business assets? Those types of issues, and I'll go into them in further detail in this presentation. Those types, the type of entity I'm going to talk about, there are different types of entity, and choosing the right one for your business is important. And also the registered agent for service of process. A lot of people pick themselves for being the registered agent. Or they pick an entity for service of process, the registered agent. So, and it has to be someone that resides in the state that you're forming your business in. So if you do choose yourself, you just want to make sure that you're accessible Monday through Fridays, 9 to 5. That's the key with registered agency. Jurisdiction, a lot of people have opinions on which state they should form their entity in. Should it be, a lot of people think it's popular to form in Delaware or Nevada or, those states, which does have appeal for certain reasons. But if you're doing all your business in one state, then even if you form in Delaware, you'd have to qualify that entity in the state you're doing business in anyway. So it's my opinion on that is form in the state you're doing business in. And if you're doing business in multiple states, then look into another state for that reason, because you'd have to qualify in all the states you're doing business in anyway. So, and as far as purpose goes, you know, we're talking about vending machine businesses here in this presentation. You would only put in a specific purpose clause, really, if you are required to do so by statute, and that is for professional services that are required to register with a Department of Professional Regulation, or they require you by statute to list in the articles a specific purpose. But for your purposes, for vending purposes, you would just do it pursuant to statute, which is, you know, the catch-all provision that they list in the Articles of Incorporation or Articles of Organization, which is anything that's allowed by under the state law, and they list it for you. So you wouldn't have to actively list anything specifically. So moving on. So here I'm getting into the types of entities. Sole proprietor is you don't do anything specifically. You are already out there doing business and you don't incorporate or organize an entity. The downfall with that is, of course, that all of your personal assets are at risk. There's no separation between you and the entity you formed. There is a corporation and the LLC are the other two popular forms of entities. And with a limited liability company, there is no restriction on the types of owners that you have with a LLC. They are taxed at the member level. So that means that all the revenues and expenses flow through straight to you as the owners of the company, owners being the members. You have limited liability protections as long as you don't commingle your funds with your personal funds. So you want to make sure that you keep things separate. You open a separate bank account for that LLC. LLC agreements may expand or restrict your fiduciary duties with the other members. So that's done through operating agreements and agreements between the members. As long as there's clear understanding between the members, you can set forth what's understood as far as how you treat each other and what the expectations are between the members. You usually raise capital in any funds through private placements, and I can have further discussions with anybody that's interested in how to raise money with the LLCs separate from this presentation, because we only have 15 minutes. There's a lot less formalities with the LLCs than there is with corporations as far as holding annual meetings and electing officers and directors. So that's another attractive benefits to LLCs. Moving on to the next slide. With the corporations, there are no restrictions as well with the types of owners, but they are subject to double taxation unless you elect what you see below S Corp elections, which is allows you to eliminate the double taxation. S Corp elections, however, do have some restrictions. You have to be U.S. citizen. You have there is a limit on how many shareholders you can have. And there can only be one type of class of stock. You can't have Class A and Class B stock. So it does have some limitations with the S Corp elections. There are more corporate formalities than the LLCs. So all in all, with the vending machine business, you might be, an LLC might be more tailored to the flexibility that you need. As far as cost-wise with the two, a corporation and an LLC, they're pretty similar, but you do need to look at the state, the Secretary of State costs. Some states do vary with their costs, but not too much. They're usually a LLC and a corporation. I'm finding state-wise that they're pretty similar with the initial cost of formation, and then the renewals for the annual reports are pretty similar nowadays. I'm in Illinois. It used to be up till about 2 years ago that the LLCs were more expensive, until they realized nobody was forming the LLCs in Illinois. They were, because they were too expensive, and then they made them the same price as the corporations. So here we go. First step, filing your articles. I've given, because I knew the audience was really nationwide, I just picked 2 different locations. I picked an Illinois and a Delaware, just 2 websites here. The filing fee for a corporation and an LLC, they're $150 to file, and $100 extra if you want it formed in 24 hours. Right now in Illinois, it's taking 10 to 14 business days if you do not expedite. So if you're not in a hurry, no big deal. Don't spend the extra money, but it is convenient to turn around the next day and have your company formed. You can do this online in Illinois. In Delaware, you can also do it online. Most states are online now. In Delaware, it's $89 to form a corporation and $90 to form an LLC, and an extra $50 to do it in 24 hours. And almost all states, there are a few that do not require annual reports, but very few. The annual reports and annual minutes are required for corporations, just annual reports for the LLCs. So, and like in Illinois, it's $75 annually. With corporations, it varies per state. So I can tell you if you want to call me afterwards with exactly what the annual fees are per state. And you have your choice with how you want to pay for your annual fees. You can do it by franchise tax or how much assets you have in the state. So there is some variation, and they give you choices on how you'd like to pay if you're doing business in a variety of different states. This could be beneficial to look at, so I can review that with you as well. This is just, I just want to give you a screenshot on what articles of organization look like. They are not long at all. And I know this is difficult to see, but I just wanted you to note this is just the name, and you have to give your primary address for the entity, and the registered agent information, and then the purpose of the business. It's just 2 pages. This is just the front page, and Delaware's is even shorter. And you upload it to the system at the Secretary of State site, and then you provide payment information. So the key here to note is it's certainly not difficult to form your entity. The important thing is what happens after you form and how you maintain and handle your business. And the important thing is not to commingle your funds with your personal assets, because that's why you're forming your entity, is to protect you and separate the business from your personal assets. And then after you form your business, you're obtaining your federal employment identification number, which is really just like you personally have your Social Security number. You're getting your federal employment identification number for your business. And this is the website you go to. The best way to obtain it is online at this website, and you do so by going through a series of screens that ask you questions about the business. You do have to have a responsible party, which is not necessarily the owner of the business, but it is somebody that the IRS is going to be calling that has the information about the business. And that responsible party has to give their social security number. They'll ask you questions like, will you be hiring employees within the next 12 months? You don't have to know for certain how many exact number of employees you're going to hire, but it's an estimate of the information about the business. You do have to report what your primary business is. And this is where you'd be putting, the vending machine owner and operator of the business. So that's where you're at. Ask those questions, and then it's instantaneous. If you're filing for the FEIN online, it is given to you after you complete this application online. So that's the wonderful thing about obtaining it online. If you try to mail or fax in your application, you're not getting it nowadays with the IRS. It's going to take you at least 6 to 8 weeks to get an FEIN number. So that really delays you starting your business. So once you get your FEIN, you are able to take your articles and your FEIN over to the bank and open your bank account. Then you're on to getting your registrations with the IDES if you're hiring employees, your Department of Revenue for your registrations for your vending machine registrations, your sales and tax registrations, your each state has its different requirements. I happen to look at a couple of different states, and you'll have to look at the statutes that each state has. So, for instance, Delaware's code section 204, you have to obtain vending machine registration prior to selling, purchasing, or hiring employees. Schedules may be required. There are certain states require vending machine decals that you must apply for, obtain, and affix to the machines. So you guys probably already have discovered all of this. But if you need assistance in any one particular state, we can be helpful in this area as well. You need to register for your sales and use tax registrations. So this area can be daunting, and we can be helpful because if you do hire employees, you've got to get your withholding tax registrations, and that's the Department of Employment Security. So I would, if I can say one thing about, today, it's that you really do need your team in place when you are doing business, whether you're doing this as a sole proprietor or you're doing it in business together. Make sure that you have great advisors with you that are helping you. Your accountant should be with you along the way, and your CPA, your an attorney or an advisor. Don't think that you can do this all yourself, because nobody could. An attorney isn't a good accountant. An accountant isn't a good attorney necessarily. A marketing person, setting up a website. Nobody is good at everything, and just, that's the truth. So, cybersecurity, nobody knows everything. So just make sure you've got a good team with you helping you. Okay, so corporate documents that are required. With the corporation, once you've set up a corporation, you'll need a set of bylaws, and that just gives you governing how the corporation will be run. When you hold your annual meeting, how many directors there'll be, and those are the people that make the decisions about the company. If it's just you in business, you'll have a sole director, and you'll also be the president, secretary, and treasurer for your business. It will just be your Bible for how the business will be run. We can create those for you. Some states require that a corporation, once it's formed, be published in the local paper. So depending on the state that you form in. You also, if you do have a trade name, you have to know if that has to be published in the paper as well. With a LLC, you'll have initial resolutions, and then if you're in business with someone else, you'll have an operating agreement. Similar to the corporation, if you're in business with someone else, you'll have what's called a shareholder agreement. These two documents, whether it be a shareholder agreement or an operating agreement, is where the meat and potatoes are for, when you are just starting off with someone, that's where you're going to discuss all of the what ifs. And so, if that's the living and breathing document that needs to be discussed right at the beginning of an organization. And whether it'll be member managed or manager managed. And by this, if it's managed by the owners of the business, that's the member managed. If it's managed by a manager, you could own the business, but appoint someone else that runs the business for you. So like I said, the LLCs are very flexible with its structure. LLCs, your profits distribution, just because you both put in the same amount of money, maybe they don't necessarily, profits don't have to be distributed equally, versus a corporation, these profits have to be distributed amongst the shareholders by their percentage of ownership in the business. So it's less flexible than an LLC would be. And then insurance, the other big issue that needs to be discussed is getting the right amount of insurance for your business. And with vending machines, there are things that can happen, and getting the right amount of general liability insurance, products liability insurance, if there's spoilage with the food that's put into the vending machine, they can also, the client could also come after the owner of the vending machine business, even and sue you if something happens to someone that bought product from your vending machine. Cyber liability, if your machines take credit cards, that's another protection that you might want on your insurance. Auto insurance for the transportation of the vending machines. If something happens in transport, that is also good to have, important to have. Workers' compensation insurance, if you have workers' comp or employees, you'll need that. Crime, theft, and vandalism, of course, another important type of insurance. And business interruption insurance, if something happens and your vending machines are not in use for a certain period of time or are stolen, you can claim business interruption insurance as well. So all of these should be covered in getting the right type of insurance. So the next slide is the pitfalls that I just want to touch on really quick. Don't commingle your funds with your personal accounts. I've discussed that. Have a shareholders agreement or operating agreement if you're in business with someone, very important. Consult with your accountant and your attorney on things. Don't sign contracts or other documents personally. Always sign in the name of your business with your title after your name. Qualify in the states that you're operating in. If you formed in, Illinois and your machines are over the border in Wisconsin, you are doing business in Wisconsin and you need to qualify in that state. Don't assume you can do it all. I've talked about that. Protect your intellectual property. If you have a logo and a slogan or a business that you want to protect its trademark, then you can register that with the USPTO. Have contracts where they're appropriate. If you are in business with, have your vending machines in businesses, don't go by verbal agreements. Get it documented in contracts with terms and agreements in place. Document your corporate decisions, major loans or leases or hiring or major events. Put them down in your resolutions. If you loan money to your company, you get it down so that you are also in line as a creditor to your business in case something happens with your business. Talk to your customer base. That's another big one. Make sure that you are aware of what's going on out there. If you've got delivery independent contractors out there, just make sure you're aware of how things are going with your customer base. Have your independent contractors and employees sign confidentiality and non-solicitation agreements. And I can talk to you further about these agreements if you're interested in. Do not misclassify your independent contractors, another big one. So if they're really on your schedule and they don't have a free schedule to work for other people, they're really not independent contractors, are they? And then the last one, get insurance. So with that, I know I talked really fast and you might have questions. Please feel free to contact me with anything that you might have. I'm happy to help. And that's it. Karen Tobin, thanks.
Karen, thank you so much for speaking to us about starting a business, and thank you to our friends at Venn Purchase Group for making this presentation possible. Again, for those of you who may not be familiar with NAMA, there's a lot more where this came from if you would like to become a member. Our membership department's contact info is on the screen now. NAMA membership gets you further access to our research, educational programs, and networking opportunities within the convenience services industry. Additionally, the great strides in advocacy for the government affairs team has saved the convenience service industry millions. Lastly, various other offerings and opportunities for small operators can be found at our trade shows. Thank you again for joining us today. This concludes today's recording.